O Tamala and Shopa delay, Trashi delay, Tamboti Shugi, and Chinamba Tama deo in Shadi. I want to say first, everybody, good morning. Not a good evening, good morning. That ring to Chutun de Yamita Ze Yajuke Lamchor Chintua. The meant to the cinema. No, the Beji the Marshans.
And I hope you're well. And we'll be continuing now with our instructions on Gampopa's Precious Garland of the Supreme Path.
Today in the Zani, that ring at Chutun, that Pachet, that ring Gini, do not Jima the Chutun Tamach Hadija, and the ring Chutun de la Matu. The Chushi Yajuke, Depadawa Kashi Chikarin, Matu, Gampopa, Lamchorin Chintawa, the Chasang take a tone, Jayam Raji, Tame Sene, Benandina, the Chutun Katsin, those in the drink, the Chutun. 你是怎么对吧的？你是怎么接？我那时呢，就请你是怎么接有了吧？他的空了，就请你是怎么？的用着，我对了，接应了就参嘛个谁呢？用呢，你妈的这些的，去请人嘛拉呢？你去请人，你妈的拉的，你是怎么见过？很多话大话就没事情。你对了。 소수문에 휴대다 대다외증아 주주라 연구도가 뭐도 아니 딱게세 가서 연구 매나 아니 연구 요 탑시죠 다들 추세야 된 노당들이 차대요 대만이 봐 추투지시 아니 배자 봐야 어네 엄마들이 들지 쉬어야지 야야와이나 슈가 심지어 핀토 갈래 카보리 어떤데 인도자네 근데 참에 마음 발은 낭토와이나 야보요리시 어디셔야이다 뭐.
So here we are reaching now the towards the end. This is the next to last session of sets of topics. This is the 27th one. The next one is the 28th, the last. So, for some months we've been looking at this text and dealing with it. Ideally, this would be something that you could recite, day by day. Say if you recited one of these sets one day, the next one, the next day, it would be about a month that of sets that you would, it'd be about 30 days that you would have something to recite like this. And this would be a good thing to do. And the best way to deal with it would be to, as we read these topics, to think, am I doing that or not? Is that a part of my life or not? And if we find that there's something, that's not, that we're not familiar with or we're not doing, then to make effort to do it, because this is what Dharma is really about, to be bringing the teachings in and acting on them, developing ourselves accordingly. Because otherwise, if we just, take this text, and we hear it, and we don't think about it again, we just set it on a shelf somewhere, that's not really that fruitful. It'd be difficult to get much benefit from it that way.
That's all. And that ring, and it and day, Kadamba, any Gampopa, good, la, and Kadamba gave it. Good, Mela, and Saja Chimbu, and it top Namjaba Chimoji. Oh, then the child to Jan, any Kapsa Chu, Indies, Kadamba, Saja Chimbu, ni, Songdun de Wake, Dama. Oh, then the child. And it in the Jani, 디 사자 침비 똑바데 줄에 찌고 있나 랑증원에 가르치 거리 시두산에 달라마라서 왔다며 다 나랑주 가주 바카라노라 아니 람말람 산지 운통게 아니 대바다 뭐시네 아니 데라서 왔자지메 봤답네 대시야 직당 아니 초사 입장시야 직당 담배 줄에 쭌르시야 다 디고데 차데도 자네 아니 내 당보들라 아니 람말라서 왔다고 아니 지난배한테 대신에 아니 사제 침비 똑바 제 감보바 제 만마 탁선 지난바가 똑바 유라 간데 주요와 있나 디난진 가랑 촐라양 아니 가르치거니 주 분배추 분반나는 출룩바 나지 어떤 데시네 나로 지신에 왔다고 그러지.
In the early part of his life, Gampopa studied with the Kadampa masters. In the latter part of his life, he studied with Milarepa and became a great yogi of Mahamudra, Tantric Mahamudra. And so this being that unified practice of the Kadampa tradition and the Mahamudra tradition, if we seek to be blessed to be able to realize these things, to have realizations of the Kadampa and the Mahamudra teachings, then we need to make requests in our Kagyu tradition. We pray single-pointedly to the Guru with the view of them being the actual Buddha. And then in addition to that, we practice purification, purifying ourselves and developing more and more positive energy, accumulating merit, and persevering in the teachings. So this is how we receive the blessings to be able to realize it. And so we make a prayer here. Let's make the prayer that we may be able to realize these teachings. Just like the contents of one vessel being poured into another, being poured into ourself.
남다 주름 잠에 사제라 등진 밤에를 롱그 벤지 실험예대 노외 주공사 탐조동 공도 베게레 암조 인도 진변 파열리만드 로드 진비 주공드니제 저바 진비 점저 제양데 로자 진비 샤랑그산 님도 진비 그다제네제 갑제 진비 라마니 바른제 준비 진비 르베잔 진진 레바 진비 샤라 소르완데 티바 진비는 조용서세 사자 진비도 방언도 틀레지보 하다 냠바라다 닝검 진비 샤라 소르완데 버딘도 진창와 르공 참달라마 까마바 이거로 공제 중내시 제반도에다 남저마 레고제시 바완제 주정베진 좀 달라 남저제제 그베도 돈라미 토제 정원 야라 공제 제진시 그 지도도 바가리다 가라와 반주지 비와서 그 컨숨도발라 마는 그 사인사 딘자발라마 롬보제 다게지 워베메 데존라 가든 침베 고네지 존데 그손 토쟁을 저잔데 양티 산제 공단냠나야 가든 산제 공외 라벤고 자발라메 샤라 소란데 다손도 롱나 주스 가다 소비동 근지디나 에데시 소모르 주바강서다 들든베 주진 첨베제 심브란데 바탐제 데시시 나모야 담발라 에게달라다네 빙게 둠다담에 게난다 와군제라게 제삼바 탐제게다게 주디암도 마전로와 남큰 타다년 베심진 탐지 시제 동안 타달레 더때 남들 띵제 대화 라나메바 양도바 조보 산지적 공헌을 보지더니 제내장 토벌사 다 대치的 담배 추삼몬드니 최진의 신의 냠슬랑바 지오 냠바고네 신사
O benevolent root guru, who is in essence all Buddhas of the past, present, and future, with great devotion I prostrate to you and go for refuge to you with my body, speech, and mind. Please grant your blessings to be cared for you by you inseparably in this lifetime and all of my future lives. Clean ground of pure ethical discipline, beautified by mountains of unfathomable samadhi, illuminating all things with wisdom light of the sun and moon, Supreme Buddha who accomplishes the welfare of all, please bestow virtue and goodness. Your mandala expanding throughout space in knowledge of all things, beautiful thousandfold light striking the lands of trainees, fully illuminating all of Buddha's teachings in their entirety. With devotion I prostrate to the great jewel of the Kagyu. O glorious and precious root guru, please take seat of lotus at my heart, caring for me in your great kindness. Please grant attainments of body, speech, and mind, equal to all Buddhas in qualities of realization, yet surpassing all Buddhas in kindness to me. I pray at the feet of my root guru, O protector, please turn the minds of myself and all beings towards the Dharma. All you who have become disciples of the Sagatas, those gone to bliss, throughout the billions of worlds of the 10 directions, all of you who wish to hear the Dharma raining down here and now, may you come here. In languages of devas, nagas, and yakshas, languages of kumbhandas and human beings, in the sounds of whatever beings exist, in every language, I shall teach the Dharma. Please listen well with the motivation of bodhicitta, thinking all mother sentient beings equal to the extent of space must by all means attain unexcelled eternal bliss of perfect complete Buddhahood. To accomplish this, I shall listen carefully without distraction to the Mahayana teachings being given here and put them into practice.
올라서 다 드랭가랑 그 초로한다지 근데 뭐 nga랑 feelings 거라도 초로하다 맞이 주게 간시나 땅아 라마망보지 춘총 가서 띠 순주망보지 쉬 근데 지게 요래 근데 지리 값을 일단 변이 라마크 순주나야라 빼깔해 가보 요래 일단 소말라 딱지 남그리 아니 참참라 빼차도 소리 하고 말이 빼차 공부를 다들 안심 빼차라 하고 말이 아니 근데 지도 참참라 순주를 살아 빼 깔해망보지 않는 거 그게 아니 순주见过 쫓아다니 빼 샘슬 식세 해나 당하는 디 순주도요 삼네 주리를 대야리 값은 신라 빼 가와 신라 하자 좋아 근데 지 용어도 와
So I'd like to talk a bit about some of my feelings. You know, I received a lot of teachings from lamas in Tibet, and that was not easy. Often, you know, there was a lot of hardship to organize and to be able to have teachings. You know, the teacher would have to examine you and check to see if you were really qualified, and sometimes just the access to the texts themselves was difficult. They were rare. We couldn't find them. You know, so when it all came together to be able to receive a teaching from a lama, it was such a step. It was such a relief. It was such a joy for that have all to come together, and so there'd be this feeling of joy and relief and a lot of feelings would be there of joy when being able to hear the teachings because of all these kinds of difficulties that would go into arranging it and having it happen.
아니 라메캅데 순주나데 니마 딱바르리 kel 순주나가리 거랑 니마 딱바르 아니 쇼파치츠 큐사니 니건 추츠 큐니스 바데 니마 레레 추츠 니레라 아니 데데시네 순주나가리 다데 값스 베세네 지보 아니 지 Chuti Shen, the Chudek Sen Pink, the Lama de Bachi and the Tani. Sugar Lama Shadicin Honjan. Shagicin Honjar, Sung the Chunu, Siachi Yuri. Shadicin Honjar, Sung the Chunu, Siate. The Harang Frank, Shadicin Horanjar, Sung the Sun. And it's just a niggy and Nanga pie on the any best in the chibo. And then I was just in the men to the Koran, Sine, men to the Machet and then I was Jitwain, when a Tamjutun this year, the young Sadi Samba, sing with Dinny Bay, Masi, the younger you. There's any chuti the Taran Bay, the zone of Korawa, zone of the Nimajil chuti, the zone of Tas, honey chuti, short of no, say and met time when in Chima Hobita. Takarachi Gorita, honey chuti. John Gondota, the genie that you treat neck of you, Marawa. Sempe John. Tatenda Oji Chuti, the Kaduya, Jan Nangri, somebody the same. Trained up in a Ungatonda in the train that Ni Tamada, the son that Jimani Tamacha, you know. And the Dutch left at then, same Josan. Then the Oji Chuti, the Anja Kadun go to Juliona, something. Oh, the Dutching Atola, the Ngala in that, the Dutch. And
when the Lama would give teachings, they would give the teachings every day, say starting at 10 in the morning till noon, 2 hours of teaching, and daily you would have teachings. And it would really be like going to the mandala of the deity and seeing the deity in the mandala, and then drinking the nectar of the teachings. And it would be such a joyful feeling, that the teaching is going on. Wouldn't this be great if this could be every day of my life, happening like this? And but then at a certain point, it would come to the end, and the Lama would announce, this is the last teaching, or this is the last teaching, and there would be a feeling of grief. People would cry because they would miss that, and wonder, when I have the chance, the opportunity to have these kinds of teachings again.
Okay, you did a good job.
Well,
Oh, the day in the Tane, that you say, I think, Pinta Deva Malin, you went Nesia, Neka Pimpat and Tato Deva, the Chiki Zawa de Carrer in those city Tane, Yabochi Sama Tawaina, Tambe Chile Mato, and Rosamevaji Chayata. Yabochi Sama Tang, no zone in the Sama Tawaina. The Ching Omaka Zawa de Carrer in those city, Tambe Chitirisha. The day in the Tane, Tambetama de Chindo Yuri. And Kashik and Neka with the Chitana Chimne, any. The Bayonting a long chain and a dead chains on the deck. Not you done it, dead marriage. And it dangerous the marriage. And in Tartok the king or the Togoina, and in Juvedo had telepangne, any around you that a chapan disease don't Marcia, say the Gia Matavaina, any Tartok the Chita Togo marriage, and in Tartok the Chita Togoina, and it done be sugar on a lamb and drone. And Rani Dani Dak and going, Dani Dak dying so far, Dani Dak and going to Julik Tavi Sene. And it's him Juchitan. All the missing and royalty tongue when the Tane tongue, Pinta Deva Malin Jung Ne, Zambele Chigang Pinta Deva Malin Jung Ne, Carrero City Tane, Sanjika Tembarum Chite tongue, and it did lamp tambachu. There he has.
So as it said, the source of all bliss and benefit is the Dharma. And if we really think about it, the real source of happiness is none other than Dharma. Because what people usually or mostly enjoy as supposed happiness, a facsimile of happiness. Buddha identifies as being of the nature of suffering of change. And if we don't, renounce such sufferings of change, if we continue to seek them out as our ultimate source of happiness, then we will never discover, true ultimate happiness, and be able to then cut through the conditioning, pervasive suffering of pervasive karmic conditioning, and then we would never be able to experience true happiness. So this is something that we need to undertake ourselves, as it said in the teachings. We are our own protector, or we can be our own enemy if we don't pursue these things. Then we will continue to experience suffering. So it's up to us to put these teachings into practice. Kare, kirangi ke kogmindue.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I
I got muted. Did I? Did you hear that last, or was it lost?
Yeah, we could hear you, just not Khenpo.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Can you hear me? Go away.
Go good.
Oh yeah. Battery, I changed the battery. Okay. Oh, in the Zane, Tangaran Chun Namja Jun the Chunyamlin Silicap Suchik, Sosu Kandakawa Zamboyimba. Oh, Naranzu Hachakawa Zamboyin, Sambajik, Sosu Sink Gapto Sene. Gawata Tovan and any Chutu Samsia to Beke Chimbori Yas.
So it's so I would say, it's really important to realize our extreme good fortune whenever we hear teachings, and to feel joy about that.
Ni Kondu Shiba Nanjing to Mambuchik and Samla days secure. Samla days to Zane, Nimbanda Tang. And the Kandunda she. The Nichi line in Samla days and the Chita Mambo and the secure. The Mao Balachina Ban Samla Devaina. Tang ate Tatanga to Lamchur in Chintua She Yajute. Should see Tambo, the Chutin, should subject apart. Should see ready till the Yamare, Chia Gomse. They ma la Sali Gila. Any teaching al Dindelite, Song Yalite, Kansa Rank Jula, Katse Jindu, Katse Jimdu. Le Nga Yi Sunga Katola. The Kong Song Yajuk, Dangwa Samoten, Jula. Tarimbo Sidendoa, this Tanio Sidendoa, the Canderia. Any day, Tarimbola de Wai not to shoot a Kanzani, the Tarimbocilla, Ladeona, and it is near Chertani Tapsine. And the dinner song Yawana Yinga to Lali to Tatane. Tangone Sena Chusia and Rotang to the jury. Kaisina, same Juchitan in Yamari. Chuba Rabla, Shaki Song Yuri, Chuba Rabdu Juvain, Nimachilla Sin and Jurando Yuri. Nimachilla Sin and Jurasona, Lulen Jurando Kari, Ngalan Jurando Kuri, Zamju Kunjura, the Atangatin Katesi, Rebbe in the Dokori. And the Chuban Dingla, Dawa Chikanani, Jika Yongori, Jika Sina, Zamju Yongoris, Jurando Togoris. And it Montale Chuba Tamala, and it logic sin, logic and ani. When Ganza de Dang, that Ganza de Ni, Maranga Hakoli Chene, Ranga Julang Human do Cha, Shedang, the Mongaja Tado, Numon Katseoa. Then the Lola Chung Song do Amado Lamadin Chushi Cola. That don't go to this in it, and it take that Chusi at the lamp and ditches in the Rone, same duty down there, baby. Lame Song Yuri, the Lame Song Tali Gila, Jachan and Jacha Gupjute. Loma Ranga Lekal Chadi. Oh, the Nigeris.
So a lot of people do retreats. You hear about people doing retreat. And often when people think of doing retreat, they think of doing a meditation of a deity and reciting a lot of mantras. At some point, if we do retreat, the kind of thing that I would like to have us do as a part of our daily practice or a session is to read through a list of one of these sets in Gampopa's Precious Garland of the Supreme Path, and then think about it in terms of ourself, do an analytic kind of meditation, analytical meditation, in which we look at these different points and say, that sounds like something very remote to me, or is it something that feels more familiar? And if there's things that feel like they're very remote, to try to bring them closer. And because this is what, the practice of Dharma is really about, checking ourselves and bringing about transformation in our mind. It's said that the best practitioner makes changes on that very day, when they hear a teaching, and transformation occurs. And then at a middling level, that after a month of practicing something, you can see results starting to happen, and at least within process a course of a year, to see benefits and to examine ourselves, think about how many afflictions of the mind am I subject to? How often do I feel anger or jealousy or pride? And see if there has been improvement. If it's been over the course of a year, saying, am I any less angry or jealous or afflicted by these delusions than I was before, and to check to see if there's been real progress. So this is the kind of thing that that we really seek in practice of Dharma, is to bring about transformation, real transformation in our mind, and this is the way we do it.
인도자네 또 추스야 돼. 추바스야 되라. 다 가르쳐 그래 지금 상담이라 마모도가 추바그 르적 같은 데 성요리 추바라 배야 돼. 어찌 바나나요와 영문의 신토를 배야네. 아니 스미라 나마미바. 낭미라 스마미바. 신앙이가 민바, 신앙이가 마미바, 소매, 신토당 바나나 던데지 빼자도 가르송그 요리시도 빼 내가 침보 시위를 해야 되라. 은혜야 빼 내가 침보. 스미시도 가시지게 슬라 접다 되네. 주바 인도도 세네. 나니모 동성과 강대리. 니 슬라 다 차로 그가 주바 인시 맹다지 커다 가지 zon다. 맹다만다 커 다체준. sim pakarese korichi simila namami basi at data which say nang mila samami basi tani Silata Chalo the Mensika Menayang, now any you mount to some loss of by shedly, pen a gypsy Milarepa ina, Chiamala Marhang in Rode. Silata Chalo Zikake Yoma. Any Rana Jin, Jasin Bushala, Pasilitena, Busukui Jubasine, Sa, Magic and Tonala, Koran Kala Sa, Niko, anything to see the Ajikan doesn't basine. Any Sobaton and Rota, the Nichil Mato Kayo Mashi Delan, Pata, Pango, that you could you Nang took Sanje Chadi. The Editani, Nang Mila, Samamiba. Any Shananga Mimba said the Tani, Tatin Sangatu, Jangu Jawa, Yino, and Rachel, Pejan, and took the war. Senina, Gelongo Juba, gets along, Dalai Lama, Siaji. Nangina, Tosam the Nijikawa, any Tubada, Sambada, Gombada, any Yoso, Chopa Tarjo Suchik. All the Chichad, Sinanika Mimba. Any Sinanika Mamimba Siate, Nambatang the main deligimatua, when a Chaya and the Tinsang, Zambelengana, Mereni reckon Zambelena Pe, Dapset down. When so Yoksa Mambodoa, the Sinjin last of Batan Zabelenke, Jaka Sinjin Kashi Tang, Legalini Kashi chicken. Selayan Nambasita Chalos Kayo Martin, Nanglayan Jurakayama Son de Chane, or the Richikatan, Sinjin Dalamason was Mamboch in the Was, the day the Chaneta, Shonga Inangatsu. Sinanika Mimba. Selayan Namba in Siachi, the Pepa in Siachi, one Namba in Siachi, Gochu, I see, Nanglayan Petinaji, and then you motoson, and it's yet to be all the Richik say. All the Nanglayan is.
We can think about the example that that Master Nagarjuna gave for practitioners, comparing them to a fruit that can either be, ripe on the inside and out, unripe on the inside and out, or it can be look unripe on the outside and be ripe on the inside, or look ripe on the outside but be unripe on the inside. So someone who puts on airs of being a practitioner, wears the robes or a spiritual practitioner, for instance, but filled with afflictions in the mind of all sorts of disturbing emotions and afflictions with ignorance, would be an example of looking ripe on the outside but not being really ripe on the inside. Whereas someone like Milarepa on the outside looked completely not like a Dharma practitioner, didn't look like anything. You might think, looking at him, that he only does three things: he eats food, sleeps, and goes to the bathroom, and not being able to see anything else on the outside than that. But in the case of Milarepa, to be completely ripened, completely matured in the within, free of delusions, have attained full enlightenment, being a Buddha within. Then there are cases. Then someone who is ripe on the outside and the inside. We could think of His Holiness the Dalai Lama being a fully ordained monk, the Dalai Lama, and internally also, and being very practiced in the Dharma, realized in the Dharma, transformed through the practice of hearing the teachings, contemplating them, and meditating on them. And then people that are unripe on the outside or the inside would be many examples of people who don't follow any spiritual path and act very badly in the world. Some world leaders are like that. But there's many people who are who act very harmfully and don't have any so these are examples. So ideally, would be for us to be ripe on the inside and the outside, to show the good example on the outside of being a Dharma practitioner, and on the inside also be sincerely working and practicing, transforming ourselves through the practices of the Dharma.
That's all. Yeah, that's the shit. I'm going to What's a man doing? That ring on you should subdue Badilla and in Mengzang which you say that they in the war. And the Jutin you should subdue by Mengzang Mengzang Pachite by your order.
So going on now with the main topic of our Precious Garland of the Supreme Path, that's set number 27, which are the 10 things that are merely names.
And then you should subdue Mengzang which you say the Chin and Chingo Jila, Be Masi, Nelok Tawa Topa, Moon June. Angaran to the Saja Chibicaps, Sechik Tudar, Rochik Gomi Sine, Saja Chibi, Namjo Ye, Sishaka, Namjo Ye Nani, Gomi Seatela, Lepswaina, and the Dawaji Pachi Yonkasari. And then the Janita, they have quiet the kitchen borwa. Namja Jun the Chushi Caps, Ye Caps, Ye Caps, Shakandua, Lamja Caps, Shakandua, and then David Caps Rindo. Then I Hakoya the kitchen body, and then David Caps Shaka.
So it's important that we understand that this teaching today, this set of 10 things that are merely names, really are talking about a very highly developed level of the path. If we think about the 4 stages of the Mahamudra practice of single-pointedness, freedom from elaboration, single taste, and no meditation, this would really be especially applicable to the fruitional state of no meditation. So it's important to understand that sometimes teachings are given in relation to the basis, sometimes in relation to the path, and sometimes in relation to the result. And this set particularly relates to the resultant stage, fruition.
Lasso. Tadegi Yi Nelo Tind Mepe, Yemen Tani, Lamla Duza Duzi Mepe, Lamen Tani, Nelo La Tabza Tabzi Mepe, Topa Menzani, Numa La Gonja Gozi Mepe, Namyo Menzani, Shila Chesa Juzi Mepe, Cuba Menzani, Dela Sunza Sunzi Mepe, Tamse Menzani, Dela Sasa Sozi Mepe, Soni Menzani, Dela Yanza Jonzi Mepe, Dumi Menzani. Dela Panza Ponzi Mepe, Koa Menzani. Dela Tosa Tosi Mepe, Reva Menzani. Dene Menzamji Chu Yeno.
Since the nature of the ground is indescribable, ground is merely a name. Since in the path there is nothing to be traversed and no one traversing it, path is merely a name. Since in the way things are, there is nothing to be viewed and no viewer, realization is merely a name. Since in the natural state there is nothing to meditate on and no meditator, experience is merely a name. Since in the ultimate nature there is nothing to be done and no doer, conduct is merely a name. Since ultimately there is nothing to be guarded and no guard, samaya is merely a name. Since ultimately there is nothing to be accumulated and no accumulator, the 2 accumulations is merely a name. Since ultimately there is nothing to be purified and no purifier, the 2 obscurations is merely a name. Since ultimately there is nothing to be abandoned and no abandoner, samsara is merely a name. Since ultimately there is nothing to be attained and no attainer, fruition is merely a name. Those are the 10 things that are merely names.
Tandinani Yi Caps Yang Yi Caps Chekio, Yi Caps Yi the Mapipa, Tatangarang to sing Ye Mapipa, Delayang Jukone, Delayang, Money, the Yuris, Yi Caps to the Yuris. Yi Caps, Yi Nelok Tawati, Korangla, Korang Rangola, Ye Nelok de Tin to me Paris, Ye Korang Nelok de Single the Tin to me Paris, Yada. Ye Korang Nelok de Tola Lam, loss of what the listener you marry. Ye comes a Kitashi and Jiri. The ye comes a Kitashi down the young yet and a consult on true. Yet on to the longer tone and Yamin saying, Tarton David comes Tom the Tani ye told a tell like ye told a tell Bena Zingne Pervesarote any Flarian any Zingan on a topography. To zing on a topography is Sarote. Betina ye Tartok Sanjia de Angarangui. Yi ne lo ka tawa te ni ne ani ti thola sangje ke yure ma to ta da ngarang zo sem le loss je ba ani te le loss je ba ji sem jin ba ji thola sangje sia de je ke yu ma re o tin di ta ne di ka su yi sia de la ko dang na ba ni si ta bo yi ne ma ji ba ka ngarang zo sem ke ye de la yang ne lo ka tawa yu ma re tin sa yu ma re tam se la song sa yu ma re sia de cha ma de tin na ni sam lo ji dang any young day, Kansa rank on to hack or Lanyam, say, and the be she don't do Tane, Tarto Mapa Punjuk Dawasi. Amat Pachong the Amandun Tulebananji, and the Korani Washington Korwa. Betinaji, and the young ye for a Tuleb, the Lanyam, and they will cups young, yes, in yes, Yatela, number Nishi down to the Juris.
So here in this first one, since the nature of the ground is indescribable, ground is merely a name. So ground here is the Tibetan shi, which means the basis, the basis or the foundation. And so this could be understood in a couple of different ways. On the one hand, it's referring to our own primordial nature, which is pure, primordially pure, and our true nature, which has always been the case. And say, you know, when we realize enlightenment, it's not like we're realizing something that was never a part of ourselves or never who we were. We're actually realizing who we were, who we are, who we have always been. So we're not realizing something outside ourselves. So it's like the crow taking off from the ship, you know, on their journey. If they're in the middle of the ocean, there's no place else to come back to except the ship. So in the ultimate, we realize our true nature, which has always been the case. But on the other hand, we are introduced to this nature by the Lama, and then we meditate on it. And and so in that case, we're working with it, we're striving to understand it. And so in both of these cases, this basis is can't be described, can't be shown. So whether it's the basis that we're meditating on in the course of our path, Rinpoche count the amagi pang nang la Katie yakyasimona.
Churanti Jutang the Kansas Joseph Fore. Under Yi Seatela, Kojuni Yuris, Yesiatela. Yesia the Naranto Yen Machipak, same that the society with Jutel, Yesia Koyachi. The Lion Yakun the Zambo in Shaki Yuris. The Lion Yesia de la Cosa Chicks. Young days of Yesiate, Yetini, Lang Tony Kansakin. One tuna, Lamyamisi in the Casarimbe, hidden David Holla Lem the Capsule, young take of Yetola Chilem. The Capsia, yes in the choir, yes, I tell a Cosa number, Niuris. And in the Calacolan to Giuris. The Chetan Dinani, or that Lamyamisi and Devon the journey, Ben a Mapang la Punju, but Dawasiate. The Yamni Tosa, the young saying, any yeet or a children at the Yetela Conan the Giuri.
So in the latter case, when we've been introduced to that basis by the Lama and we meditate upon it, that's the other sense of the base that we deal with in the course of our path. And it's like a child jumping into their mother's lap. So we seek to realize that basis, and then when we finally get to the culmination of it, we realize, that basis which we're realizing is who we have always been. It's always been our true nature. Lotus.
Laws. Yeah. Ye ne lo tin de me pe men sang. Sita ye ne lo te la. Ye ne lo ta nga ran su ye ne ma chi pe ye ne lo. Ngu ne ta ne ngu de chön ne de ba ka to pa ni ne de chi song so wa yi na. De la tin de yo ma. Tin de yo ma ri sia te ke ka re she ke yo ri si du ta ne. Nga ran su se ne lo ka ta wa lan den de yo ma re sia chi. Ta da sang ji chom de ke 남한 통시 심진 측도 람지 바치다 남한 통시 된다 딱 바치 지다 춘도와의 대비식 배된 통화 빼지지는 이 받는 많이 가래송 거 요리시도 디나니 남화서야 되나 시고 빼나 빼지 자와 있는 남화서야 된디 반낭 동바 자잉이 반낭 동바를 때라 고골마도 디 팀바가 요들 흥보들라 세고 말은 디 반낭 동바들라 디 반낭 동바들라 간진독 세오나 매지게 데라 아니 아까레세 그렇지 노당 예당 유당당 들리진 동생은 셰시게요 말. 근데 요 말이 지내가 랍시가 말아와 저런데 랍비 뉴욕세도 세와인 지 요리다 되네. 베틴 아이지 이 내록 되라야 띵도 요 말이지. 치킨 춘토고 말이지. 베기 유토고 말이지. 책당 베다 들라서 봤던 게 셰시가 말. 이내양 뇽드 값은 꾸바크 브람스와 나지. 꾸바크 브람스와 이나 칸인 등알모린도 쓰는 시시그 말했대. 등알몬 녹삼바지고 코랑코랑을 하고 온다고 그러지.
So then when we do realize that ground, that basis, even when it's realized, then it can't be described. And the verse that Rinpoche recited is to the effect that how can you describe space? So if someone's trying to describe what space is, there's nothing to say about it. We're not talking about something that looks like a certain color or a certain shape in space, like clouds, but just the space itself. How could you describe that? It's just impossible to put into words or describe. Just like a mute person tasting sugar, wouldn't be able to describe it in words, and yet there is an experience there. It's not there's something that's being experienced. It's not that there's nothing at all there. There is an experience, but it has to be realized by the individual internally, and there's no way to really describe it in words or images.
That's all. Any new bad lamla dusi me pe laming time. Yel tendichi shong dewa yina lamla chi makwari. Lamla yang ye korang la nelo la tin de me ba yin de zane lang korang la yang duza ani sia de duza lam dang duzi ke nam jor pa o tende sia chi khala yo mare o tende so yo.
Since in the path there's nothing to be traversed and no one traversing it, and path is merely a name. So if that's the case with the basis, the ground that we're seeking to realize, then in the course of realizing it, also there's no one traveling on that path, or the path itself is merely name.
Ani sumba de nelong la tabji me pe topa mengchang yi. Ta de sumba de Tendrichiki ye lam neloxia ten devil yanan ye lam desum yonsu zopa. Yi kapsu any tindu me pachi, nasam jumi, tendrichi yina yet lamla yan rogora, lamla drusa drusi me pachataswa. The Indutani lamla tendichi chaswa in a tea lamni lepen drevetela yang, nelok de la yang, and it tabza tabzi yuchi, tabzi yurta yuchi. Oh, kaya you mari, saki, ko maybe topa mingzani, topa siat, nelok tawa siat, dreva siat. They are mingzam.
So that being the case with the basis and the path, then it's also the case with the result, which this third one, speaking about the realization, likewise, it's impossible to describe that there's no one seeing it, there's nothing seen. You know, if that's the case with the nature, that it can't be described beyond, if it's beyond words or expression, then the same is true about the fruitional state. That there's impossible to say that there's this person seeing that.
Dadila Gypsy Milarepa, Korandri, Gom Jamni Jodele Cubs, and then Yamachila, Makashi, Korandena Yona, and Chura Gon Kandisi Jacki, Yakachati, Milarepa, Gon Kandisi Jacki, City Tane. And he Gon Kaya Jacame so, Gon Kaya Jacame. Any Gon Kaya Jacame song to Tane, any Loma de Le Tambopa in this Hakaya Maone. I can't say. Go Jacame city, and you read Tomba Chicana, Koranchi Padene. The Nuba that is a Gona Jacka Samari, Karisecona sound, and it gives him Malare bucket. Any decor song, Yella, any Nelola, Tabzata Tabsi Mendosi. Lala Duzata Dusi Mendosi. Gon Janking around with a Gon Jassi Yota, Gon Janki Siati. Main some regas, Kayam Mendosi, and any Loma de oh, Timeteke Makashi, Conto Harlan. What I call Kitchen down the pen, a pen, Nathan Tombo de Charlie service. And literally the Nathan Tombo the Kitchen machine, Natsu Mola, let Tambo Palagon Kare Jagoris. Maji Shiro Chisidi. Or did the Milarepa can't hold the Giora, New Bakas or the Giora. Or that is Kitchen the Alter my own. And literally the Lama Jimbala knitted the Jitina Conti Laparis. Naranga Mune. At the same Koranga Tolandus market, she go in, Tiko Kitty Samaris, Kainsina, Koran Revenate pen Topotil left side. What in the song?
So one time there was a number of people that gathered around Milarepa and were asking him about, what meditation he did, and he spoke along these lines, saying that I don't do any meditation. There's and so one of the people there thought, oh, that's strange. Milarepa's going up in the mountains and staying. He must be just like some crazy person that just doesn't do anything up there. Doesn't do any meditation. But then Milarepa explained these things that that the ground is merely a name, that there's nothing to be seen, that path is merely a name, that there's no one who traverses the path, no one that does any meditation. And so the people got the idea, oh, he must be speaking at a very high level, and then asked, well, what about for someone like us who's a beginner? What kind of meditation should we do? And Milarepa says, well, in my experience, there's no meditator, nothing that we meditated upon. So, if you need instructions about like that, you better go to another teacher to explain that to you.
Oh yeah, that's all samba. Any day ke jiba de nyuma la gonza gonzi mi be nyam nyong ming sai. That is ko ten chikwa da le ko nyuma se ate ka kala ko ko si nyuma se ate ke mapju pa la ko ko. Namja ju de ngarang chu gom ja ma shi le kanga kare de si de chane gom ya bo me yong kanga de ngarang chu ju ju mang da. Re do mang ju ju mang da. Mapju pa na sanje kunje lam so. Mapjupa. Sela jeju kaya mesi ba rawab si yoya tela nyuma se yore. Tendu tani nyuma la si. Sen mapjupa. Rawab ka sen nyuma. Tela, ene gomza se yada yoma si. Gomza sen se yada, gomzi kanza se yada, yota yuchin se yada, kaya yoma si. Te nyuma la tine gom lem jite nyam nyong se yada ta, nyam da topa si nyam. Tendechi yowa ina, teya mengsam. Oh,
Since in the natural state there is nothing to meditate upon, no meditator experiences merely a name. So what's being referred to as the natural state here, in Tibetan, nyugma, is really referring to a state of unaltered, uncontrived, or not artificial state. So, our problem in meditation tends to be too many fabrications, thinking and developing concepts and not being able to be free of those. And so it's said that in that unfabricated state is enlightenment. Enlightenment is to be found in the unfabricated state. And so, when we are focused on that, then there is no one looking, no one meditating, no meditation being done. It can't be described. It's so realization and experience is merely a name.
Oh, so. Any shilla chesa chuzi me, Juba mensains. The Numa seate. Dina ni tawa the gomba the chuba the yama, Tedisi Tama Yogodwa. That in the shilla chesa chuzi me, Juba yam mensains. She seate mapchuba, on the Shibana Numa. She. Nelokawa Ngoma de la Shiki. This she de la. Nelokawa Ngoma, she, Korang Ngoma la. And it la. Chiesa the Chusi Kayan Yomanis. Around Mambo Chief Jusigo, Tatina, Temena, Sabagado, Mambo City. They come to Chiesa the Chusi Kayan Yomanis. Tawak all Chuba Shiki, or the Sokayan Yomanis. The Chubatia Mensami, so much.
Since in the ultimate nature there is nothing to be done and no doer, conduct is merely a name. So here the Tibetan that's being translated as she, which means that that ultimate nature, the true nature of things. So we develop a lot of concepts of what needs to be done, what needs to, we think it's like this, or it's like that, or it's not like this, it's not like that. But in this realization of the ultimate nature, then there's nothing to do. So the conduct is merely a name.
That's all. And it's Jampa Tharchin la te yue. Tata tinti la yue.
Lai, yeah.
All of Tuchina. Sambala tate Tilando Tunju Sanji Chubi. Nishitabdun, Dema Nishitabdun Anthony. Sholoka took your abdun. Choloka Tukure Dundela.
Drupchure dun.
Lao, Nishita Duna, then a poet, a major, that is ship on Matu Somande. Tinshing on the Mayan Ramaps, Nega, Judo, Yichu, Odawa. Juda someday to the Ripungo, Riton Tanyang and the Chawaii. Ramyung Ishini Tajins. A tea cups a shake Yurita, Tabacote, de Majilada.
So this verse in the Excellent Path of Freedom, Jewel Ornament of Liberation in brief, Rinpoche's own composition, there is this verse number 67 on page 27 that deals with the view. Dropping into our own present moment of awareness, fresh, unaltered, with mindfulness and alertness, without distraction, not thinking of stillness as good and movement as bad, in pure awareness, inexpressible, beyond thought, understanding concepts and emptiness to be equal. If you develop certainty in your own experience, that is an ornament of liberation.
Lasso, only Yuma de la Tukure Jetela, Nela Machan, Julam Madanshi, Simi Khan and Jova Kawani. Riput Dotsin told the Songwana, Kansha Jimmy Somanello, or Machupan the Gampopa, Sundushina Tajima.
Then the next verse also, not attached to stillness or averse to movement, when from the sky of mind's true nature, snow of movement falls upon the hot stone of awareness. Whatever appears leaves no trace. If we understand Gampopa's method of not altering the fresh, present mode of existence, that is an ornament of liberation.
And Yuma de la Depot number top Jim and Mao by Husumazashu, that Shipa Mapu Numunga, Kada Jichasum Drangoni. Sazo Sungjo Nature Menga, the Lepan Yansalana, Taji.
And the next verse, not following after thoughts of the past or anticipating and welcoming thoughts of the future, within inborn, unaltered present awareness, not finding past, present, and future in primordial purity. If we practice this essential instruction that unifies Mahamudra and Dzogchen, that is an ornament of liberation.
Nishi Nandina Tawayi, Mayan Ringochana, Gombai, Kashagado Machu Chubai, Zangi Redo Mipan Drevi, Kane Tagum Chupe Menga, and then Garmi Yamsalana, Taji.
That discovered and definitive knowledge is the view. Cultivating pure awareness without distraction is meditation. Not rejecting, not approving, not altering whatever appears is conduct. Being beyond hope and fear is the result. Practicing these important precepts of view, meditation, and action is an ornament of liberation.
Tangune Kechimbote, and that Tangune Papa Julichi and the same la Kandichi Yogari, say and that Soala Kandichi Yogari, said, Tandi Holoka Nantini. Tada Koning at you pay Bram, Kupe Bram Suva Nanji Mato. Second turn to go marry, Kanishi Shikamari. The shares what the Yene Della that this Holocanant in the Yuris.
So the meaning in these verses is meant to describe the undescribable, what the mute person is unable to put into words about the taste of the brown sugar.
That's all. That did Machu Tekar Japa Linewa. Newa Judemepa Salewa. Retongusun Newa Rigewa. Kansha Londe to the Genewa. Sare Yeton Zimi Yerewa. Nyamyon Nangni Shana Tajins. Tatela Sano Mabotay. That it's sickly like, that's all.
Leaving it as it is, unaltered, is peaceful. Experience inexpressible is vividly clear. Direct experience of awareness emptiness is wide awake. Whatever appears is beyond intellect, free of fabrications, naked, primordially pure, clear awareness, free of grasping, pristine. If this appears in your experience, that is an ornament of liberation.
나서 가나지 나섬지 미 시랍 바로 시 마치 뭔가 남큰 원이 소소라는 이 시주에 와도 자위나 산살로 시와 다 데이트 책다 파지 라오라오다 지차데.
And a similar meaning that's being expressed in the praise of the great mother of all the Buddhas, beyond speech, thought, or expression, wisdom gone beyond, unborn, unceasing, with a nature-like space, discerning transcendent wisdom's own sphere of awareness, homage to the mother of the 3 times Buddhas.
Thank you,
So the
Saba.
same Buddha's meaning described there.
Oh yeah. 라서 당가 주 시를 제사 다 주바들라 늘 송사 송시미 배 담체야 명상이 된세야 되게 내놓고 따버 되는 토라 렘니 값수 애니 담체 송산들이시야 송신들이시야 담체가 원이네 양치 다다 가지 또다 용하게 제 너무 라서 봤은 거 여러와 내지지 담체 송거요 넘바 송거요세야 내록 맙지 방어마 코랑 생고 토니 근데 때라 송사 송시 가야 요 말이 송거요.
Since ultimately there is nothing to be guarded and no guard, Samaya is merely a name. So in the commitments and vows we take, there is this relationship between what is to be abandoned or accomplished and acting accordingly. But in that state, that unaltered state, then none of these are found, can be found in their mere names.
된라 사사 소지미 배 촌이 명상이 대한 지발이 된시 마모도 왔다디 참아들라 된시네 된 엄마 내놓고 따베 된 엄마 돌아 렘니 나당 안한테 초사 그 여러와 르그 초사 나그 초사 아니 진짜만 르그 사지야다 초사 라소바 지기 여러와디 초사야 돼 가르치듯 지기 여리 시듯잖아 내놓고 따와 똑바 주를 지어치듯 지기 여리잖아 된 엄마 돌아 돼요 말이지 된라 사자다 소지미 아니 초니 사기 소나고 초당 삼이 시그 초디 초니대야 맹장을 이시.
So you see, so since ultimately there is nothing to be accumulated and no accumulator, the two accumulations is merely a name. You see how a number of these start with the phrase "since in the ultimate nature." In the Tibetan, this is dun, which means in actuality, or since ultimately. So it's talking about all these things in terms of their true nature, the ultimate nature. That in these, when we gather these two accumulations of wisdom and merit, that in that ultimate nature, in their true nature, they are not found; they're merely names.
아니 지바가 돌아 장사 존심이 드니양 맹장이시. 다 초사래.
Since ultimately there is nothing to be purified and no purifier, the two obscurations is merely a name.
내로 가면 따바 톨을 햄도 뉴먼 버드바다 시즈 드바라서 방아주 다다 득득 자야가 치든 배좀 마보 치기 여러와. 아니 텔라 장사가 득득다 존시게 아니 간사 남저 봐. 아니 랑은의 말을 봐인데 자네 되라 아니 야자다 존시 아니 드바니 뉴먼버 드바스야 되다 십지 드바 뉴먼버 드바스야 되게 아니 다당아랑 주줄래요 뉴먼 라바티 차라시야 되요리 아니 십지 드바스야 되게 아니 나랑 주 산제가 람라 바드 주제게 탐진 침배 람라 바드 주베게 디 드바들 드바 차와들 시게 뉴먼버 드바 되게 아니 레이다테니를 아다 mambo쇼고도 지나라서 남도 같은 님은 바로 콘솔 넘버 다바가
So we put a lot of effort into to purifying ourselves of these two obscurations, the the deluded obscurations, the obstacles to liberation, are the delusions, ignorance, attachment, aversion, and so on, disturbing disturbing afflictions in the mind. and the second obscuration is that which is the obstacle to omniscience, to knowledge of all things, so a subtler level. But in the case of all of these, in their true nature, they don't exist independently from their own side, and they cannot be found. They're merely names. So the act of purifying that which is to be purified, and persons purifying all are not found existing from their own side. They're merely names.
그래서 어느 주바되게 되나 톱지 미변 되어요 맹상이지.
Since ultimately there is nothing to be abandoned and no abandoner, samsara is merely a name.
근데 나니 가래 하고 거리시도 있잖아요. 당근에 단에게 고민해야 돼. 나랑 세직 두다 로직 고민해야 돼. 그 고민 살아렙 차도 차마 요 말이 해야 돼. 그 차마 생각토로 좋다와질 거예요. 고민해야 돼. 그 가야 매와질 거예요 말이. 고민해야 돼. 그 추용수 초바 생각 오라 좋다와. 때려 요 차와질 거인데 자네니 때려 미가 그 다자네 매심이 시작이요와. 된들이
양교수만 거 건담을 보시.
아, 주 커피 가와요. 커피 유에.
네, 커피 매. 네, 킨디레 라.
아, 주들. 네 나니 다 톱사다 톱시미 가야 미세야 돼. 가르시게 요리 시드자네. 남조 이런 거 나니 세직다 두다 로치 고미 그 값은 레비 값이 시게 요와다 하고 그래지. 아인시나 내 용수 족바 요 대와지라. 된지 어때 용수 족바 세고 어라 저 차와지라. 시엔도 자네 미세기. 뺀다와 차야와이나 미세야 그 가라 잔도 자네. 때야탄 같은 파랑 같은 파라상 같은 모디 소화시야 티 소화티 사자들 랩소와이나 추용수 족바 참아서 생고 어라 저 차와인도 자네. 아니 매세야 그 가트 텔레자가 요리시. 미다자야테. 가야 매 대와지라 거야 매.
So since ultimately there is nothing to be attained and no attainer, fruition is merely a name. So when we reach that ultimate realization, as described in the Heart Sutra, the Tayata Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha, the Bodhi, meaning enlightenment, when we reach that state, we say that fruition is merely a name, but it doesn't mean that one realizes that nothing at all exists. This would be kind of a nihilistic sort of view. What it really means is that all things are found to be complete in the mind.
올라서 다들행아치 파체 주치되는 창조 요기 가장 삼등 애들은 저와들이 가시질린 거 삼수와 아니 나양 데시지는 내가 데시지를 소아 자락 밀레로파치약 되만도야 네발라 어디 뒤수도 되어야 되겠니 들은 저와들이 그뒤수도 만도 아니 들은 그 주치되는 창조인지.
So we'll stop here for today, and I had thought that we would have some questions and answers, but there's been some emergency that come up where I needed to do some prayers for someone who's sick, and so I'm going to have to move on to doing that.
올라서 어느 때인데 당에 공도 시바나지 당에 mambo 시에요. 지난주랑 오늘 나랑 오늘 깔레잡 아니 사바타시 깨벼랑 맞아 참에다 달란디 주네 무수다 토크요 말에 무수 투와 난신세네 다 깔래 잡네 아니 직다 파치드야 당디 로컬레가서 레라오지 뭐도아 어떤데 인데 자네 말랑은 깔래 잡네 단 내버 로마다 나와 가시지는 것 같은데 취리시에 요리 아니 지난배다 의시에 야지대 ngā xīn xīn la mā tu bā chū te la tu ne ngā xīn xīn tan di chū te la pē tā rī mō si te yu rī ngā yā bō jī te wā yī na ngā sō jī bā rī sō sō jī yō rī ngā nyam ne yā bō shī tu kī yu mā rī te yī na yā ngā la pē mā yā wā jī ne chū xīn xīn ge nī mā mā tak sōm lā bā dā tā bō yā mī tā bō lā jī lā nī pē yā nī chī rān chū te yī sī nī mā rī rī jī nī sēm lēn jī rā tāng tā bī tā bī sē ne 추세야 돼 대리노아 생랑 임베손이 zam보라 양주와 땅야 돼 추세야 돼 대차대 요리 딘주와 땅시 때 르게 추랑게 산치 산번 망번치는 생런주와 땅 깔에 가보래 더 초디서 사가로 아마도 아니 드가나 이 나게 님바 땅네 지 라마다 사고도 병 대게요 생런주와 땅 깔에 가보래 생라 간데신 주와 땅고를 시대잖아요. 생라 추랑게 다들 문튼소 그 셈. 아니 니몽 독성 그 셈데라. 아니 코랑랑 무슨 gar와지 그 님보지 생그 토네 천일이 세네. 내 바탑도 땅네. 내 매와르세네. 어떤데 시고. 근데 인도자네 나랑 졸라 토마미 반에 다 받드 니몽 독성 때게 셈도 토라 땅이. 나 작반달라 마소나 가지. 니몽 독성 때 나는 주 아니 가서디 여보라 그 코랑 그 난거 완차 참아도 그심 다 잡발을 빼야 빼디나 이주요 근데 요거 요나 아니 나 생거 토는 줄 왔다는 생거 토는 보험 잡네 썸먹 당네 어때 빼낸 같이 모르이지 어디신도서 나서
So these are very exalted teachings, and I'm like you, an ordinary person. Don't have great experience of all of these things, but I can speak from the lineage of masters of Marpa, Milarepa, and Gampopa, to say that
oh
really what we want to do, what we're seeking to do in our practice of Dharma is to bring about transformation of our mind. And it really has to come about through checking ourselves and checking whether what kind of afflictive emotions are rising in us and applying the direct antidotes to those things. Because physical practices of prostrations or verbal recitations of mantra, it's difficult to bring about transformation of the mind in this way. So it's our job to work at this, because up to now it's as if there's this criminal, this taken up residence in our mind, of our ignorance and our attachment and aversion, and it's running things from within ourselves. So we need to take back control, of our own mind from the criminal-like delusions that have taken over inside ourselves for so long, and apply the antidotes to them. And that's what I would like to ask you to continue to persevere in.
also don't look at me. I want to say don't look at me right? Maybe I am not good example for the guru compared to my root guru. Just example to follow the Marma Taksum, Marpa Losa, Milarepa, and the Gampopa. This teaching is the teaching, and this teaching is also best teacher. It's very important. Sometimes, we did the long term Dharma. I know some people say, I'm doing something. I ask them, what are you doing? What are you doing? They say, oh, I recite the mantra, little prostration. I doing these things. I say, oh, that's very good. But in my mind, Always, it's really very important to fixing your mind. Meditate every day. Every day meditate. I think most of you know Stillness. I think you read a lot of his book. What he said, I wrote yesterday. I read his book yesterday, little bit. He said, just meditate. Just meditate. This is the only Dharma. Ravasamba, Tatina na Kare Sondo City, Tina Haka Katsang. Chukin Nimbo Yonsu Zopa Tama the Timbanya Yana Jane. Lu Timbanya, Sola Timbanya, Chu Timbanya, Sem Timbanya. Ti Timbanya Yana Jan, Ti Timbanya Yonsu Zopa Tama the Luke Timbanya, Sola Timbanya, Chu Timbanya, some dayang, Sem Timbanya Yakatola, left to the scene. Dodo said, Nangba security, Nangba say at the same Nangla, can't Nangla Tinens or to such a shakira. Nangba Omachi Chagua in a Churag Gombia, same Juch Tangoris. Nang say at the Nangba say at. Or the nature so young Akatante, must send and true born that is also. Or the day.
So I was reading some of one of Thich Nhat Hanh's books the other days and was quite moved by that, whereas he was explaining how so he was really emphasizing meditation, saying meditation is really the only true practice of Buddha's teachings, and was explaining how all of the teachings of Buddha can be included in the 4 close placements of mindfulness, which is mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of the feelings, mindfulness of phenomena, and mindfulness of the mind. So all of these being inward, introspective kinds of practices. That Buddhism is really about looking inward. And the Tibetan word for Buddhism is Nangpa, the inside, or the insider. So we look within, and all of the teachings of Buddha can be included in these 4 close placements of mindfulness. Finally, all in close mindfulness of the mind. So this is what I would like to encourage you towards, and this was quite moving for me to look at some of his teachings.
Okay, lots of any talent some yagging to China.
So we'll leave it here today.
Pande Zawe Lama Rinpoche Dagi Chiworo Peme Denshola Kadin Chembe Kone Jisone Kuson Dagi Ngoju Tseto So So de Ramjan Gyamne Gyatsu Chinla Tan Denye Tendre Lua Mebe Tu Kebara Chime Tseye Latso Ki Tsewa Yeshe Chinche Tengire Kekun Chinle Karke Kama Be Kasu Donga Chazo Menga Wame Sewe Lamda Nyamdo Ki Yunden Tseka Yetere Shabden Kange sansum doje rangkam su lekwara tenche lungdo tambech. Shiju te sam gombe dude ye saden gembe chenle tachin shu. Pande lame nambara tharba la kichi tsamya lungda mikesh. Chinze lekwara tongwe mugu ke lame chenla semla jubar shu. Kewa kundu yangda lama tang jeme chuki pela longchuchi. Sata lamke yunde rapso ne pande lame kupanyo to shu.
O glorious and precious root Guru, please take seat of lotus at my crown. Caring for me in your great kindness, please grant attainments of body, speech, and mind. Om Swati. May the blessings of infinite seas of our places of refuge, the force of the two truths' infallible interdependence, and especially the hosts of deities of immortal well-being, now rain down the magnificent splendor of their wisdom and power of longevity. The Lord of the dance of all victors' enlightened activity is Karmapa. Your unquenchable thirst for the inner essence of his tradition's doctrines of discourses, tantras, great seal, great perfection, and pith instructions has brought the qualities of signs on the spiritual path, your experience and realization, to their full flowering. May your life be firm. May the wisdom mysteries of your body, speech, and mind be as perfectly firm as a Vajra's own immutable elements. May your gatherings of disciples who study and practice the sacred teachings of scripture and realization by listening, contemplation, and meditation cover the earth. May your activity reach its ultimate consummation. May I never for an instant develop wrong views of the glorious Guru's life and deeds, but with devotion seeing all they do as excellent, may the Guru's blessings enter my mind. In all lives may I never be parted from qualified Gurus, enjoy glory of Dharma, and by perfecting all qualities of the paths and stages, quickly attain the state of the glorious Guru.
Dajin Simjin Damje Lo Jusen Dovara Sinjia Labda Sora Chulamda Dovara Sinjia Labda Sora Lan Truba Savara Sinjia Labda Sora Truba Ishisen Javara Sinjia Labda So Daso Namje Judan Tumba Ye Jedar Samba Ivjin Truba Dan Nedonke So Bade Juben So Nyavara Shevara Sinjia Labda So 내가 수양과 진타다신 두제지 나변저지바 휴진 주변로다린 지다 삼배동혼의 바다시쇼 산조선초 뭐지 마치 뻔한 지저지 지반년밤이 봐야 공내 공단 배와쇼 올라서 올라서 아니 투치낭 참아 아니 나서 유만지 용사바 가든치